Every day of the 4 years of Donald Trump's presidency, it was a good day to be Matt Gaetz. But that time, like the Trump presidency, is now gone. Gaetz is under federal investigation to see if he paid women for sex, if he had a sexual relationship with a minor, a 17-year-old girl, and if he paid for that girl to travel with him. If he violated that or other federal sex trafficking laws, you know the trouble Matt Gaetz could be looking at. Today, word of a plea deal with the other man connected to the case, a Florida Republican who was set to stand trial this summer for sex trafficking and other charges, and whose attorney more than hinted today that he's ready to flip on Gaetz.
I'm sure Matt Gaetz is not feeling very comfortable today.
But as Gaetz begins to try and defend himself, no matter how indefensible the allegations, there is a new focus on who he was when he was a state legislator in Florida. Were there signs about what he would be like once he got to our nation's capital? And for that and more, let's bring back Andrew.
And Rich, Matt Gaetz, believe it or not, is trying to start the process of trying to rehab his image, if that's possible. Tomorrow, Gaetz is slated to be the feature speaker for the group Women for America First. It's the same group that helped organize the Trump rally in Washington that ended with the Capitol riot. This is a Trump group. It's happening at a Trump golf course. In short, the whole thing is Trump, Trump, Trump. Worth pointing out that Trump himself, whom Gaetz attached himself to like a friendly parasite, didn't exactly give Gaetz a lot of cover in his statement yesterday, noting only that Gaetz did not ask him directly for a pardon. The reporting has Gaetz asking the White House, not Trump himself. And he only said that Gaetz has denied the allegations, not that Gaetz is innocent or that Gaetz is a nice guy or anything else. Gaetz also penned an op-ed to the conservative Washington Examiner this week, claiming he's innocent, but looking closer, Gaetz kept referring to his old lifestyle, how it was different but not illegal. He wrote about his sex life before meeting his fiancée, and oddly, quote, "My personal life is and always has been conducted on my own time and my own dime," which frankly is just a weird thing for a guy to say after he's been accused of paying for sex. And what is this old lifestyle that Gaetz keeps referring to? He got engaged on December 31st and seems to be saying that anything he did before that should be just ignored since that was the old him. So let's take a look at the old Gaetz. He's the guy who women say paid them for sex, then took ecstasy while partying with them and asked them to recruit other girls for him to sleep with. He's the guy who has so few friends among House Republicans, they are dishing tales of his actions to reporters, including of his love for alcohol and illegal drugs, his series of connections with much younger women, and that he openly dated a college student. She was over 18 back in 2018 when she came to D.C. as an intern. He's the old Gaetz who colleagues say showed nude photos of women he said he had slept with, including one of a naked woman playing hula hoop. That source calling Gaetz's photo a point of pride. He's also the guy who, while serving in the state legislature, reportedly ran a game to score their sexual conquests with added points for sleeping with interns, staffers, female colleagues in the state house, and virgins, and who led the opposition to a bill that would criminalize revenge porn. Quote, "Matt was absolutely against it," a former colleague said. He thought the picture was his to do with what he wanted. He thought that any picture was his to use as he wanted, an expression of his rights. So let's lift the lid on the old Gaetz in Florida, and for that we turn to Gary Fineout. Gary is a reporter with Politico. He's also the writer of their Florida Playbook. Gary, let's start with today's breaking news that associate of Gaetz's, a Republican county lawmaker in Florida before his arrest with a reported plea deal today. His name's Joel Greenberg. He's accused, among other things, of organizing a sex trafficking system. And the women have reportedly said that they were paid to have sex with him, with Gaetz, and others at Greenberg's instructions. What do you know about Greenberg? How well was the stuff surrounding him known? And what can you tell us about his connections with Gaetz, even the above-board variety?
Well, Joel Greenberg is known as a tax collector in Seminole County. That's kind of a local official. It's an elected position. And Joel Greenberg was elected a few years ago to that position. And he and Gaetz became fast friends, and they palled around a lot. And in fact, at one point in time, Matt Gaetz suggested that Joel Greenberg would make a fine congressman to represent that area. So, in fact, there's a picture that's gotten a lot of currency in the last couple of weeks, a picture of Roger Stone, Joel Greenberg, and Matt Gaetz. So the two were very much friends, very much, did things together. There was a voicemail that came out about a week ago where the two of them had called a female Democratic legislator in which they called her up and just said that they wanted to talk to her about her lovely qualities, and she kind of said it was creepy. But that's just an example of the two were very much together a lot. And now these charges against Mr. Greenberg are quite extensive. They cover a wide variety of things, everything from identity theft to stalking to using taxpayer money to purchase Bitcoin. So a long laundry list of charges. And of course, as you alluded to, the fact is today, his lawyers indicated that they're trying to negotiate a plea deal. And the question is, well, what does that mean for Matt Gaetz? And does that mean that Mr. Greenberg has some information and evidence that he's going to now give prosecutors that could be used against Gaetz?
Sure sounds like Greenberg might be the other shoe to drop on Gaetz. Let's go back now to Gaetz's time in the state legislature, and I want to begin with that alleged point game for sexual conquests. Back in 2013, your colleague at Politico, Mark Caputo, tweeted out the existence of the point game, how many points someone would earn for specific notches on their belts, though he did not mention Gaetz in that tweet. I'm curious, how well known was the existence of that game and whether Gaetz was reported or rumored to be a part of it at the time?
Well, I recall that that little revelation by by Mark Caputo, who I work with now at Politico. I didn't work with him at the time. And certainly he has come out and said, well, he didn't hear about this directly with Gaetz. But the way it works here in Tallahassee, it's like a bubble, just like maybe people will associate with Washington, D.C. And over the years, there's been several things where this culture has resulted in some very unsavory events. I mean, we've had a couple of legislators at the height of the Me Too movement who wound up resigning because they were accused of improper behavior, including sexual harassment. And so, including what's interesting is one of the senators who resigned was urged to resign by Matt Gaetz because he was critical of his behavior. So here in Tallahassee, there is sometimes this very insular type of activity that goes on, and I don't know what goes on behind closed doors.
Gary, what was Gaetz's reputation in the Florida State House, both as a legislator but also as just a person?
He was considered to be, very smart about legal things, and because he was an attorney, he was known for his razor sharp tongue. I mean, he was known for being very aggressive, very combative. Pivotal example in 2015, a debate over Medicaid expansion, where he tweeted out some criticisms of two African-American legislators, in which there are a lot of people who were upset and they felt it was racist. He basically defended himself and said it wasn't. And in fact, the House Speaker was forced to issue a statement saying, well, he's an agitator, but he's not a racist. So, but the point is that while Gaetz was very much involved, was in a top position here in the Florida House, he had a reputation for getting into it with people.
I want to ask you about that revenge porn bill that Gaetz opposed while in Tallahassee. There are some mitigating factors on top of his opposition to it. There's the quote from lawmakers that he thought he was entitled to own any photos that he had, which certainly seems to speak to concerns about his own life. And his odd defense of Congresswoman Katie Hill after she resigned being victimized by revenge porn. Both seem to fit in with what we're learning about his personality. I'm wondering, what more can you add to that story, the revenge porn bill, or how that might add to the image of Gaetz that we're all developing?
Well, I think the thing that you need to look at with Representative Gaetz is that he doesn't fall neatly within all those other categories that you think of with Republicans and conservative Republicans. It doesn't necessarily surprise me for him to take a position kind of, contrary to other people. He's done it all the time. He's clashed with lots of Republicans. I mean, he has a very fractious relationship with Rick Scott, the former governor of the state, who's now a U.S. senator. They do not have a good relationship, and they've battled and crossed swords. And even leading up to this most recent stuff, he was taking shots at the current state Senate president over issues.
And finally, Gary, Gaetz's father, Don Gaetz, well known in Florida politics for a long time, former state Senate president. Is there anything from his father's career or anything related with their relationship that might add to our understanding of Matt?
Well, Don Gaetz was state Senate president, as you pointed out, and in fact, Don Gaetz himself would occasionally have little blow-ups with people. In fact, Don Gaetz was in line to possibly become president of the University of West Florida down here. And basically what happened is that Governor Rick Scott kind of interfered, and the job went to somebody else. So it's this complicated situation with the relationships here. And it's not as, cut and dry as one would think in terms of, okay, they're all Republican, they must all be on the same side. I mean, the other thing you got to remember is here in Florida, the Republicans have been in control of state government for more than 20 years. And so the Democrats aren't as big of an obstacle. It's more about this infighting that sometimes goes on among Republicans.
Gary Fineout is a Florida reporter for Politico. He's also the author of their Florida Playbook. Gary, really appreciate the insight. Thank you.
No, thank you for having me on.
Rich?
Andrew, thank you. When we come back, an ER doctor will join us to discuss all things COVID, including what we've learned about the vaccine now that it's been out for more than 6 months, and also whether or not he thinks we need to issue vaccine passports.